Hello, welcome to this video where we are going to take a look at the current running event, which is Rivals Week. We have a couple spawns in this event that are pretty good for PvP if you don't have them yet. These Pokemon will be spawning during this event. There's also Rolls, but Rolls is not as great for PvP. Obviously, this is going to be about their evolutions. I put like a line here around the Pokemon that will be focusing on. Gligar is not an evolution, but it is the one you will be looking out for the Great League. Politoed is not the evolution of Poliwrath, but it's not as viable as Poliwrath really is. There are more spawns specifically with this event, but these are not the Pokemon I will be focusing on in this video. They're not as great in PvP. I would say Zangoose and Seviper are niche. They are pretty useful, and especially in restricted metas. And I think Durant can be a Pokemon that can be good someday. It has a really good typing, the same as Scissor. It's Steel and Bug, but it doesn't have great attacks currently, so it needs a moveset update to be very good. But I think it can be if it gets that. The battles I'll be featuring in this video are from a Show 6 Pick 3 practice tournament. I usually host those in my Discord, about 3 or 4 a week or so. Everyone is welcome to join. Make sure to read the rules though. The first Pokemon we take a look at is Machamp. This is the moveset I have on Machamp. It's a standard moveset. Counter is one of the best fast attacks in the game. Cross Chop paces super quickly. Every 5 counters you have one, and Rock Slide provides coverage against flyers. This is actually a specific matchup that Machamp does a little bit better in. Normally, Machamp is used as Shadow just for the sheer damage output, but I have a regular Machamp here since Shadow is not spawning with the event. And regular still is pretty respectable. As you can see here, I can actually make the one shield extremely close here. I have to get to Rock Slide, which regular Machamp is barely able to do so. So yeah, Rock Slide going in here. If this gets shielded, great. I have 2 shields down. If not, this will almost knock out. Look how close it gets. The Altaria doesn't even get to another charge stack once I swap into my Gligar there. In this next battle, I have my Machamp in the back. Sableye, lead this into the Shadow Gligar. Shadow Gligar wins the 2 shields straight. Aerial Ace here. But if I call an Aerial Ace bait, I can win the 1 shield here. So I'm not going to shield this one, hoping that it is an Aerial Ace, and it is. So that's great. And now I should be able to shield and get to another one. If it was a Dig, I would have been knocked out by now. So, yeah, very convenient there. And now I get shields down. This can set up my backline very conveniently here. Farming a little bit to make also making sure my opponent doesn't catch, and if there's like a fight in the back, maybe we can get to another power play. But no, he shields, goes shields down, farms me down. I need to get rid of the Gligar. Gligar is very good against Machamp. Very good. One of the worst fighters there. Then my opponent swaps into Skarmy, which is pretty good against my Altaria, so I swap into Machamp immediately. This didn't used to be a great matchup. Well, I mean, when Skarmy had Air Slash was super effective as the fast attack, but it was very mediocre. Now that's Steel Wing, which is not super effective, so Machamp has time to get to charge stacks. And you see the damage output is very respectable here. I can even farm down this Skarmory entirely, which is huge. Let's see what comes in here. I believe the Gligar is barely not into cross chop range. But let's see, here I see Lantern comes in, so I'm going to go straight for the cross chop. Actually, a misplay, because I believe a Rock Slide does a little bit more than a cross chop, and I would only get 2 charge stacks here. Cross chop is more efficient, but because I only get 2 charge stacks, double Rock Slide was the play there. And I'm not sure if it even matters, though. My opponent gets to a Thunderbolt, regardless of 1 or 2 Rock Slide there. And then the Gligar has an Air Ace as well. So unfortunately, that loses me the battle. I get charge stack Purity Air, super close game, as good as I can play it, I think. I don't know how else I could have done that. And then Machamp gets Wing took down. Now, obviously, what Machamp really counts in this meta is normal types, ice types, and even Mandibuzz is not that bad for Machamp, since I'm a fighting type. I'm trying to catch here on the Altaria unsuccessfully. But Machamp with energy is very flexible. The one thing I need to be afraid of, however, is Annihilape. This is really the flaw with Machamp, because it's a fighter that's entirely walled by Annihilape, plus it's weak to flying types. So it basically does about the same that Vigoroth does, just with better damage output against the things it's supposed to have damage output against. While Vigoroth is like not weak to Gligar. Yeah, this Mandibuzz actually so bulky is actually being able to flip switch advantage. I'm gonna let that go, hoping for the air race, but it's not at this point. Yeah, I just have to hope it's not Annihilape in the back. I know my opponent has it on his team of 6, but he may not have brought those 3 to this battle. My team that I used in this practice tournament was very weak to Skarmy, and he does have it in the back, which is great. They swap back in Lickitung. Lickitung has a pretty good matchup here because of Power Whip, which is double super effective, but Scald can be super annoying. And I actually do get an attack drop there. I wasn't very lucky in this tournament, but it is what it is. At this point, Machamp is the win condition, and you'll see why. Actually, we've seen it the whole time. The damage output of Machamp is just insane. And then imagine that it's Shadow. Shadow hits even harder, but it also takes more damage. So really, I think the regular one is also pretty viable, but it's just not what I'm used to as well, because it's like a kamikaze Pokemon, really. You know, it's they're just different damage outputs. My opponent tries to be smart on the charges there, so I get less farm, or he gets farm. But instead, I just farm up to a Mubble and a Scald. Now I can launch a Scald on the Skarmy. This wasn't really necessary, but because I already want to shoot up, Machamp with a shoot up just wins, straight up wins here. It's Steel and Flying, so counters do very good damage here. Gonna just counter this down. My opponent still throws. Doesn't really matter though, because at this point, I mean, he can't get the 3 charge stacks here, so I just counter down, and that's a good game. Now, the second Pokemon that we have here is probably the #1 Pokemon you should be looking out for with this event. I am running Night Slash as the second charge attack. You can also have Ice Punch to cover Gligar a little bit better, but Night Slash is really nice for the pacing against like opposing Lickitung. Counter obviously the best fast attack in the game, or almost, and Shadow Ball is basically mandatory coverage, just hitting anything so hard. Let's see, this matchup, I'm quite weak to Feraligatr, but luckily I see it here in the lead. This Feraligatr does have Ice Beam though, which will take me out in 1 charge stack, so I gotta shield that. Yeah. At this point, it looks a little bit tough because Galarian Stunfisk is so-so in his matchups, and if it's Gligar in the back, I'm a little bit in trouble. He swaps in Alolan Sandslash with Power Snow. I swap into Galarian Stunfisk immediately. Not a great matchup, though. This used to be better before Alolan Sandslash had Drill Run, but now it's not that great anymore. But Galarian Stunfisk, quite bulky. Can take a Drill Run. I should be able to get to the Rock Slide here to hopefully get a shield. If unshielded, still will do a solid chunk, but obviously I want them to switch out, which they do. They're actually going to Annihilape. I barely don't get to my Earthquake there. Very unfortunate. Galarian Stunfisk used to be okay against Machamp in the past, but not so much against Annihilape, which is just a little bit higher attack. But you'll see later that that matchup is actually pretty okay in the 1 shields. You go for the Shadow Ball. I am shields down at this point, but here is the strength of Annihilape. If you have an Alolan Sandslash, we will see this later as well from the other side, but it punches Alolan Sandslash down effortlessly. Even if you take super effective from Shadow Claw that Alolan Sandslash can have as a fast attack, this is still such a great matchup. Another thing you can do with Night Slash that Annihilape at this point is kind of notorious for is the Night Slash boost. I get a terrible lead here against the Clodsire. I mean, it's not terrible, it was not great either because the counters are resisted on Clodsire. Clodsire is basically what Galarian Stunfisk used to be, but then with a counter resistance. Earthquake's gonna chunk. My opponent is staying in. They have a Mantine on their Show 6 team, so I reckon that they just want to align that to my Annihilape. That's kind of what I'm wary of right now. And they could also still expect that I'm trying to bait this out, that they still could have Registeel in the back, so anything is possible at this point. Very surprised that they stay in. This is not per se a bad matchup for the Lickitung, but my opponent's smart. They now go into Annihilape. They know I don't get to a Power Whip, so I have to throw Body Slam here. At this point, I'm predicting the Mantine in the back, so I'm going to swap into my Annihilape here. But since they're ahead in energy, this is kind of terrible. I'm very inclined to no-shoot there, but they also Night Slash bait. They actually boosted there. Terrible for as well. This is such an annoying matchup. I also boost, by the way, so that makes it even. But if you remember, like the Frostlass matchup, the person who baits wins the 2s quite hard. This is very similar because your counters are double resisted on each other. That's what makes this mirror matchup so tough. I will shield another Night Slash there. And I lost Charge Attack Purdy before against him, so I'm not going to throw immediately there. I want to farm some more energy because the counters are double resisted. I am able to I have some more time there. Gonna go in, throw this into the Clodsire. The reason why I cannot farm this down with the Cresselia, so I kind of have to, hope I can farm down. I can actually. Boosted Annihilape is just so strong. Even like a Gligar would still have to respect like a Night Slash because it just does so much damage. They bring back in the Annihilape. This would normally do like 25%, but now with the boost knocks out. I actually got another boost in the back as a dual goal. And this is pretty much game over. It's going to take a while to the very end. The Grass Knots and the Ice Winds go through until the very last one. Well, I tried to farm down, but it was funny. He had 2 attacks there. Doesn't really matter because my counter 2-turn attack will register before his Ice Shard, which is 3 turns and doesn't win a battle. The next Pokemon we take a look at here is Alolan Sandslash. This is the moveset that I have here. The fast attack is Shadow Claw. This is a legacy fast attack, but Power Snow is just as viable, just as a little bit of a different role, because it does better against Gligar and Lickitung particularly. However, Shadow Claw does better against this Pokemon here, Lantern. Now, Alolan Sandslash usually is run as a Shadow version as well, just because for better damage output. But what regular Alolan Sandslash has going for it is its bulk. I'm actually going to no-shoot this and test it out, because I really never ever played with the regular version. But it can take a Surf way more comfortable than the Shadow can. So that gives it a little bit of an edge here. Drone is super effective. I win the zero shield scenario here, so that's great. Shadow actually struggles in the zero shield scenario as well, because Thunderbolt would have knocked out. Yeah, I get Charge Attack Purity there. I'm just going to let it go at this point, because they have no energy, and I can get a nice farm down here. In the next battle, we get everyone's favorite mirror, the Scald debuffers. I run a pretty high attack Wishcash, so I win Charge Attack Purity, which is great, always very crucial in this kind of matchup. I have my Alolan Sandslash in the back here, and that's because my opponent has an Altaria, which in the previous game he has not led yet, so I'm hoping that I can get my Alolan Sandslash on it this time. He doesn't get a debuff, that's great. I win Charge Attack Purity, so I throw immediately there. If he would catch an Altaria, my Alolan Sandslash can be locked in, so that's just fantastic. He gets the debuff, but I needed it on the first attack, because now even a Mud Bomb would still knock out from this range, from the Shadow Wishcash, despite one debuff. He goes for Scald, actually, was surprising. Goes into Lantern. Important detail here, since he swapped in, he's one turn behind, because a swap takes one turn, so if I throw the foul play here, he doesn't sneak a Spark here. So now I'm always one Shadow Claw ahead, and I should be able to win the zero shoot scenario here as well. So I'm just going to do that. If it is a fighter in the back, I'm a little bit screwed at this point. Since I'm one ahead, I can do one more Shadow Claw, get Charge Security Tie here. And then my Alolan Sandslash has 2 shields now. There is still Wishcash, but I think I should be fine there. Let's see what comes in. It is the Altaria. This is wonderful. Alolan Sandslash has a steel defensive typing. That means that it resists Dragon Breaths, making it very good in a matchup. I don't have Power Snow as the fast attack, so my Shadow Claws don't add up as much. But Ice Punch is double super effective on Altaria. And since I farmed up more energy there, the timer was not up. They couldn't swap out just yet. Now they have to face my Alolan Sandslash with a lot of energy. And back comes the Altaria. This is where Shadow tries a little bit better, just because Ice Punch is more threatening. But from regular, it's just not really. This is where Power Snow would help a little bit, but it's a positive matchup regardless, as I can farm him down. Now, Alolan Sandslash does not come without risk. This is a very common Pokemon. This is a very bad matchup for the Alolan Sandslash. I'm going to go for the Ice Punch here. I know I would pace at the same time for the Mud Bomb for the first one, but I didn't think they would throw immediately. Now they throw, I get the catch on Sableye, which is great. My opponent has an Annihilape on their show 6 team, but I don't expect it here, simply because they will be very weak to my Altaria lead. They bring in their own Altaria, makes sense, they want to get rid of this, because it would lose very hard to my Alolan Sandslash. So I'm feeling very confident here. I actually trust my Sableye enough that I can get to the return here. This will knock out the Altaria if he does not shield this. And it doesn't get shielded, so I have switch advantage now. But the best I could face in the back now is Lantern or Skarmory. Skarmory is so much for Alolan Sandslash. You don't resist Steel Wing, and Braver still does a lot of damage. I get the attack drop here, unfortunately. This is another opponent, so I lose Charge Attack Purity here, unfortunately. And now it really comes down to what's in the back. Alolan Sandslash wins a lot of 2-shield scenario, as long as it's not like a ground type or a fighting type. Fighting types are, that's where Alolan Sandslash is helpless. My opponent actually does run the Annihilape. He ran very weak to the Altaria, and you see here, Alolan Sandslash is just helpless there. The next Pokemon we have here is the most meta Pokemon currently. It's Gligar. It's so flexible, has very few weaknesses. It's basically only Skarmory and Ice-type Pokemon. Now, the reason why a lot of players prefer to use Shadow is because the Aerial Ace Charge Attack is way more respectable against fighting types such as Poliwrath and Annihilape, and Dig is more respectable against Lantern. In this battle, I run a soft ABA line. This means that I lead weak to Skarmory with my Altaria, but Altaria has an okay matchup here. My Gligar will be terrible here, so that's why this is why I stay in with the Altaria here. It doesn't have a great matchup, but I don't want my Gligar on the Skarmory. Let's see. I just land a Moonblast here. Now, one thing that I need to keep in mind here is if they Brave Bird, I still have to deal with this later on my Gligar. They do Brave Bird and get the full farm down. This makes Skarmory excellent in this matchup in the zero shield. Let's see. They actually throw another attack here. Now, one thing that regular Gligar is going for it is it's actually pretty bulky. I like the bulk on it way more than the Shadow version. And we will see that later actually as well. In comes their Altaria. I swap into my Alolan Sandslash, but I run the wrong moveset here. I have Bulldoze, so very unfortunate. I think with Drone this was very manageable because Alolan Sandslash would win the 2-shield scenario. I get the bait though. My plan at this point is like get all the baits, land the Bulldoze, because they probably don't want their Altaria on my Alolan Sandslash. So I would reckon they shield everything here. They actually went really weak to Alolan Sandslash in general. Or not weak, but like, it didn't bring a hard answer. Unfortunately, I no-shield that. They would have survived a Duron. Duron from Shadow does, I believe, about 50%, and from regular would have done a little bit less. This is a charge tech purity type, but as you can see, I think at this point I may have knocked out the Lantern. Fortunately, now I will live this serve because I am regular Alolan Sandslash. That means I might be able to keep an Ice Punch for Altaria. I have another Dig left as well. Dig is super effective. Gligar is one of the flyers that can fight back well against Lantern next to Tropius and Jumpluff. But I need this area to win the battle because you can see here, there's also a little bit of an Alolan Sandslash showcase. Again, the Ice Punch just doesn't do enough here. I need Power Snow and Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Maybe then I would have won that. In this battle, I want to show you the Gligar and Annihilape matchup. But first, we lead Machamp into the Mandibuzz. This is not a bad matchup simply because I have Rock Slide. Snarl, the fast attack, is resisted, so Machamp can hang on here. My opponent needs 2 areas to knock me out. I'm going to try to catch unsuccessfully, however. Kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. Gligar versus Annihilape. Shadow actually needs about 6 or 7 wing attack and then an area ace to knock it out. Regular Gligar doesn't. However, regular Gligar does tank the charge attacks way better. This is incredibly bad for me. I don't know at this point yet that it's going to be Annihilape in the back. I think I want to bait out Skarmory, but they didn't bring it, so unfortunate. They threw that attack immediately, but they have to throw another one if they don't want to keep switch. Perfect counter my opponent. Now I can get energy on my Machamp. And remember, Machamp is extremely walled by Annihilape, so my energy is going nowhere. I'm not going to shield this because it does less than Aerial Ace. But man, if it is Skarmory, I kind of need the HP there. Let's see what comes in. In comes the Mandibuzz. And again, at this point, I didn't know it was Annihilape, but I was very surprised by this play. I'm actually going to try to counter down. If it is Skarmory in the back at this point, I want to get as much energy as possible. Pull those shields. I need to get 3 Cross Chop at least. Maybe 2 Cross Chop and a Rock Slide. I shield it up and counter down. Let's see what comes in. It's actually Annihilape, which is terrible. But this is where regular Gligar excels. Because a Shadow Gligar would get knocked out by, I believe, about 8 to 10 counters plus a Shadow Ball. But regular Gligar, nah, this hangs on. This is not an Ice Punch Annihilape, so this Shadow Ball doesn't even put me into the red. I was actually very pleasantly surprised by how good regular Gligar is in other perspectives. It's way less punishing than Shadow is. My opponent's trying to stay out of Rock Slide range. Very unfortunate for my opponent because I have 2 of them now. Even the boost here is not going to save him. Since I have regular Machamp, which is also a little bit bulkier, I will be able to survive these counters and I will get to Rock Slide and that wins me this battle. So regular Gligar, really clutch here. Then the next fighter we're showcasing, this is the 3rd fighter that we have, is Poliwrath. And this is a very unique one because I think this Pokemon has like the best moveset in the game, or almost the best moveset. Counter is a Community Day attack, so you need an elite fast attack to get this on your Poliwrath. And then you have Icy Wind, which obviously ice coverage, but also debuffs the opponent's attack. And Scald, very strong water type, damage output, plus 50% chance to debuff your opponent. This is one of the few Pokemon that can break the Skarmory Whiscash core, and that's why I like this a lot. You don't need Shadow of Poliwrath. This is one of the few that performs equally well. Shadow picks up Annihilape in the one shields, but regular picks up Shadow Gligar in the one shield. So they both have their niches. Here we see Poliwrath lead into Skarmory lead. These battles are from my friend Maximilian. He also played in this practice tournament. So here's the thing, Steel Wing is resisted, so you see the fast attack do absolutely nothing. However, Sky Attack or Brave Bird would do a lot of damage to Poliwrath. Brave Bird would definitely knock out. And you can see there the attack drop, which is great. Maxi immediately shielding. This puts the opponent in such an awkward spot. They have to switch out into the Whiscash. Now, you think, okay, there's the core breaker, the Poliwrath, but he even has Altaria and Abomasnow in the back. Actually, I'm not sure what you want to swap in there. Both Altaria and Abomasnow are great there. I guess Altaria is just a bit bulkier than the Shadow Abomasnow that Maxi had. Poliwrath Abomasnow core is fantastic to core break the most 2 cores in the current meta. The first one being Gligar and Lantern. That's what Abomasnow breaks, although Gligar and Abomasnow is so-so. And Poliwrath breaks Whiscash Skarmory. Fantastic Pokemon together. However, they get core broken by the most common fighter in the meta, which is Annihilape. So, yeah. Those 2 Pokemon are really cool together. I think that, you know, if you bring them, your opponent will always have to respect them because those cores are just so common. Look at that, Maxi just swapping into the Poliwrath immediately because he wants to debuff immediately, wants to get shields back, and this is so annoying for the opponent because if you have 1 Pokemon remaining, you cannot clear debuffs anymore. Going for a Sky Attack, pulls second shield from Maxi. In the back is Lickitung. Yeah, this is just what Poliwrath wrecks. Skarmory, Whiscash, Lickitung together. I could not wish for a better Poliwrath showcase here. This is perfect, because these 3 together is exactly why Poliwrath is so good. And because you have regular, you can take that a little bit better. Barely don't get to the Icy Wind. Because obviously Lickitung still has Power Whip, which threatens Shadow Poliwrath more than it threatens the regular Poliwrath. But yeah, again, this is the one Pokemon I would argue that both regular and Shadow perform equally well. So yeah, very, very nice showcase there. We've already seen a bit of this Pokemon. This is a very safe Pokemon to use, but also a difficult Pokemon to acquire if you're a newer player, because you need XL Candy to make this Pokemon. They do spoil during this event, however. You have Lick as the fast attack, making it very good against Ghost-type Pokemon. Body Slam is a very strong neutral attack, and then Power Up covers water types. Lickitung is just a very neutral pick. It can deal with Pokemon, as you can see here, like Alolan Sandslash, but it's also okay against like Annihilape. Since the Alolan Sandslash has Shadow Claw here, this is actually a winning matchup for that Lickitung. My opponent stores a lot of energy there. I go for the Power Whip onto this Annihilape, and you'll see that this is not the worst. As long as your Power Whip doesn't get shielded. They have to go for Night Slash, which is not the most efficient attack, but that's fine. Because I can take the energy here. The problem here is, though, I think there's a Gligar on the back, so I kind of need Switch, but I don't think I can shield there. Maybe I should have, though. Maybe I should have. Instead, I'm going to do something else. I want to show a little bit more of an Annihilape here, so I'm going to farm it all the way down. I know there's a Night Slash, so I can take that. My counters are double resisted, so I have a lot of time to get some energy there. And now the Gligar comes back in. In my head, the Alolan Sandslash had way less HP, so I'm going to bring in the Skarmy. Maybe I should not even have thrown that, because then I could have locked him in for a little bit and then get more energy on my Skarmy. This Alolan Sandslash actually has way more health and energy than I remembered, so that's kind of a problem there. Skarmy is not the worst against Alolan Sandslash, because the Steel Wings are neutral, but I don't want to throw Charge Attack here. Skarmy, however, is very good against Gligar. It was Gligar, basically. However, Gligar with 2 shields at this point. I am dry on the Annihilape, and I have to get all his energy in here as well. Obviously, Patoman, my opponent, a very good player, is going to shield everything from the Skarmy, realizing that I won't be able to make it to a Shadow Ball because I'm 8 counters off. And at this point, even this dig will take out my Skarmy almost. I think it not just yet, but it's pretty strong and does too much damage. I need to get to another Sky Attack here, but I don't get there. I'm 1 off, unfortunately. So, yeah. Maybe I should just split for alignment there. But this shows that Lickitung is actually quite good in some of the matchups that seem to be worse. The last Pokemon I want to feature here is a Pokemon that used to be so good back in the days. People were begging for it to be nerfed. Now it's nerfed, and it's not as good anymore, but it does have a specific niche. It has a pretty good typing, but because Earthquake was nerfed in the past, it's not as great anymore. In fact, Galarian Stunfisk can lose the even shields to Lickitung, Cresselia, and Skarmory. All matchups that used to be good for it. That's basically because of the Earthquake nerf, but also because of the Skarmory buff. So what I want to show here is actually the versatility of its moveset. Unfortunately, Galarian Stunfisk is not really the flyer count anymore, because the main flyer is Gligar and Skarmory. Like I said, it's not that great anymore. This Cresselia will win the 0 shields here. That is okay, but I'm going to go for a wicked farm down on the Galarian Stunfisk here. I can take the Grass Knot, no problem. And then this opponent has an Ultra League team in Great League. They have like Shadow Swampert, Clefables, Heatran, which is actually a Moss League Pokemon, Registeel. I'm actually very surprised they come in with this. I would expect the Swampert because my Galarian Stunfisk was very good against them. But no Swampert. I'm going to farm a little bit more, get a Charge Attack Priority Tie with this Earthquake on the Focus Blast. I reckon my opponent would shoot here. I regretted not baiting, but they actually didn't. And then there's Heatran in the back. Great League Heatran. It's very fragile. It has little use, but it's cool to see. This next matchup that I want to show, Batman absolutely destroyed me in this best of 3 here. I lead my Skarmy into Lantern. This is impossible to come back from. But this is interesting, because look at how close this matchup is with 1 Mudshot advantage. The Earthquake does quite some damage, way more than it used to do on Machamp. My opponent's counting very well, trying to get Charge Attack Priority Tie on my Rock Slide. I'm going to shield up this Shadow Ball, then go for the Rock Slide. Hopefully, I can get Switch here, but there's no way he would let Switch go of Lantern and into Skarmory. So, but look at his. It's like 1 HP that this Annihilape has. In fact, I can Dragon Breath down before he can fire his Charge Attack here. Does this put me in a good spot? No, it's Gligar on the back. I'll just show you how it ends, really. There is later the Lantern on my Skarmy. So, no, didn't win. But it was cool to see that Galarian Stunfisk can still make that kind of bad matchups pretty close. In this final matchup, I want to show you both the strength and the weakness of Galarian Stunfisk. I get a terrible lead. I get an okay swap in, actually. Here's the thing. Lickitung is not terrible into Annihilape, But Annihilape can force switch here. And I'm always afraid, you're always afraid of them boosting as well with the Nice Slash. I reckon they want to keep switch advantage, so I'm going to bait the Body Slam. This will allow Lickitung to win the one shield scenario, because the Power Whip will knock out. I can shield this, see if I do. This is not really in farm down range for that Cresselia, and I need to get rid of this for my Galarian Stunfisk. There we go, the Power Whip. This should knock out the Annihilape if no shielded. But it does get shielded, yeah. Makes sense. Because if there's like with Alolan Sandslash, you always need switch advantage. If I have my own Annihilape, then my opponent would lose, right? But we now have a shield advantage for the Galarian Stunfisk. This used to be like the Pokemon that had almost no losses with one shield advantage. Galarian Stunfisk, great typing, great moveset. I'm gonna swap it in to the Alolan Sandslash, which is very prone to an Earthquake now. I gotta shield a Driron though, because it will put me almost into the red. And then it really comes down to what's in the back. It is unfortunately Gligar. This is one of the reasons why Galarian Stunfisk also is not really good anymore. Rock Slide just doesn't even do half damage. I needed to do half because then I maybe could have done it. But at this point I need 3 charge attacks and he's just building up to get to this dig. And this dig will do so much damage. Super effective, will put me very low. The wing attacks don't do anything, but I have to throw immediately, otherwise he gets to an Aerial Ace. And now I need to get to an Earthquake still, because Cresselia has like no energy, so this is basically impossible for me to win. Yeah, basically a little bit what used to be so good. Galarian Stunfisk is really not that good anymore. It can be really niche into some teams, but I guess the hard meta, Galarian Stunfisk is probably the worst of the Pokemon of the spawns this event. So now that we've looked through all these Pokemon, I'm going to rate them based on how much you would need these for PvP. First off, Machamp. I think a 5 out of 10. This is a fighter you can use. It's not really mandatory. I think the Shadow is just a little better because it really just relies on its damage output. So I think they're better fighters as well. And that's for that reason I don't rate Machamp very high currently. Annihilape, I think, is a 10 out of 10. This is the best and most flexible fighter in the current meta. Really only fierce fairy types. And if they don't have Charm, you probably still have play. That's why I really like Annihilape. And yeah, this is the Pokemon you probably must be going for this event if you don't have one yet. Alolan Sandslash, also the non-shadow variant. I actually rate this an 8 out of 10 because it basically does the same as the shadow does. And for that reason, it really just executes very well in the role that it has. Now, the other thing though, it's not a flexible Pokemon really, right? Because it loses to Whiscash and fighters which are everywhere. And there's also fire types often, which makes Alolan Sandslash sometimes more risky than rewarding. Gligar, regular Gligar, not Shadow. I'm actually going to give this a 9 out of 10. I was very surprised by how good this still is. I haven't used this in a while. I always use Shadow. And it's just way less punishing. If I were to use a team with very fragile Pokemon, then I would probably opt for regular Gligar. Just because it's still very good into Fighters and Lantern. Basically, the matchups it already was good in as Shadow as well. But it's just less punishing there. Poliwrath. I might be a little bit biased here, but I would give this a 9 out of 10 as well. It's such a good core breaker for dragons, for Skarmory, for Whiscash, for steel types, for Lickitung. It just has so much play into anything. I think that both really are good, Shadow and Regular. Regular just does a little bit better into Gligar, while Shadow has way more pressure into Pokemon like Skarmory and Whiscash, and it can also win the one-shots against Annihilape even. This is one of my favorite Pokemon to use as well. If you get like a farm down with this Pokemon, you probably win the battle, because his energy is basically good anywhere. Lickitung, I actually think this is a 7 out of 10. It's definitely not a mandatory Pokemon. It's very unique in its role though, and it's usually pretty safe, but I feel like many teams just know how to deal with Lickitung, and the main targets that it used to have, like Sableye, even Kofagrigus or something, just aren't as much around there anymore. Cresselia is not that great of a matchup for Lickitung, even when it has Future Sight. So for that reason, I find Lickitung so-so. It does cover Lantern and Whiscash a little bit, so I guess it has a go for it, but it's definitely not a mandatory Pokemon. And then, I think this is the loser of the event, Galarian Stunfisk. I would give this a 3 out of 10. I did core break a pretty spicy or off-meta team with it, but honestly, into every team that has like a fighter, a water type, or a Gligar, which is sometimes half of the teams that have these 3 Pokemon, is just not useful. This is not the Pokemon you need for PvP. So yeah, if you don't have those Pokemon yet for PvP, this is a very good event to get them. Even I myself learned a little bit more this time. So yeah, I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you in the next one.